Hello and welcome to Church at Home with Rachel for Wednesday, the 26th of April. Wow, this month is going back really quickly. The other morning, as I was sitting and meditating, sitting there with Creator, which for the last couple of weeks has been interesting because Creator has sort of been presenting in my own imagination. This is not because this is how Creator is, but in my mind's eye, Creator is both male and female, like two different beings. So the Trinity, which is three, has become four because in my meditation, I'm often sitting in front of a fire, like a fire pit. And Jesus is to my right, often sitting in what we here in Canada, at least for me, we from Ontario, where I'm from, would call Muskoka chairs, and often the east coast of the States, I think they call them Adirondack chairs. Jesus sitting to my right in one. The Holy Spirit is always an eagle sitting on a stump on the other side of the fire. Myself here in my chair facing, out. And then Creator to my left. And the last couple of weeks anyway, Creator has been both a male person and a female person. Wise people. Um, I've talked about that a little bit before, but that's not what I really want to get into. We are experiencing, this past week, we have been experiencing some heavy wind in Alberta, at least where I live. And on Monday, when I was sitting and having my time of meditation, I was realizing that as I was sitting there, I could really hear the wind outside. It was really, really bad. And it reminded me that a year ago, right about now, we had a whole month of wind. About the 1st of May, it started, and it seemed like it never ended. That seemed to coincide with when my husband Rob's illness started, but we thought it was just really bad allergies. And he, you know, hindsight being 2020, we of course could have done everything differently, but we didn't. At that time, we thought it was really bad allergies. First real solid windy spring in Alberta, and just didn't know. And we were in the middle of moving our house, and we're doing that on our own because the military wasn't moving us, the church wasn't moving us. We had bought a house. I came across, for some reason, I was dizzy, like inner ear, like can't stand up straight, everything spinning for about 2.5 months, and that started around right around this time last year. And all of that coincided with this incredible amount of wind that just sort of picked up the 1st of May and stayed. And so I'm sitting in my chair, my eyes closed, and I'm trying to meditate and thinking of the Trinity with me and all four parts of them, and hearing that wind outside, and it was really bothering me. And all of a sudden, in my mind's eye, I realized that our campfire, where we are, had a lean-to around it. So behind me and to the sides and above, there was there was protection from the wind. It didn't mean we couldn't hear the wind. We could still feel the wind. It was moving the flames and the fire from time to time. We could see we're facing a lake, and we could see the water like white caps on the water. The wind was so high. And I remember as I was sitting there thinking, meditating, thinking, okay, the wind, I'm really becoming aware that the wind bothers me. And I think it's just last year, and looking back on knowing now what was happening to Rob, I think in my mind, in my imagination, in my subconscious, the wind has associated itself, or my his illness has associated itself with the wind. So it was making me very, very uncomfortable. And I spent my 10 minutes thinking and listening to that wind and realizing that even though the wind is ferocious and it's whipping around out there, and I can hear my garbage can moving around my front yard, be in the wind, which I'd have to get as soon as I was done and fix that. Um, Even though all that was happening, I was present and safe with the Trinity. God was with me. Jesus and the Spirit were with me. I was not in any danger. But the thing is that the wind didn't just disappear just because I was feeling anxious and saying, and literally praying, okay, God, make this wind stop. I'm very uncomfortable. I don't like this. Make it go away. What I was reminded of is that God doesn't just necessarily make the tough stuff go away, but it was God that built the lean-to. It was God that made sure that we still had the fire to keep us warm, and that the wind would not blow it out or cause a forest fire with it. But that the wind was still there, and that I was not the only one. I was very aware that when I meditate, there's a vision I have in front of me. I was in front of a lake and looking out, and I was very aware there were no birds, there were no small animals, there was nothing moving except the trees were moving violently, and the waves and the grass was moving, but there was no wildlife. And I realized that when the wind, when those things that are driving me crazy, those things that are so difficult to deal with, it's not simply me that has to deal with them. Those winds that are hurting me or make me feel uncomfortable, it's affecting all of creation. It's affecting the people around me. It's affecting everyone. And then, because God is good and God has an incredible sense of humor, I picked up today's devotion from Bear Grylls' Soul Fuel. And the blessing of this is it doesn't have dates. It just has numbers. You pick it up where you go. So if I don't do one day, I'm not trying to catch up. This one's honest. I swear to you on all that is beautiful and wonderful in God's name, this is the devotion for the day when I was thinking about the wind. In the midst of the storm, the storm on the Sea of Galilee didn't just whip up the wind and the waves, it sent everyone in the boat into a panic. Even the hardened fishermen among them, who would have been used to bad weather, were reduced to terrified children. Well, almost everyone. As the disciples panicked and prayed, Jesus stayed asleep. The disciples were only too aware of the danger and the risk. They knew that waves of that size could overturn their boat and take their lives. Jesus stayed asleep. 2,000 years later, we are still so often found panicking in the boat. When life gets tough, we can spend a lot of time and energy wondering when Jesus is going to wake up and do something. In times like this, our faith is being tested. Eventually, Jesus acted, and the storm was silenced as quickly as it came. He calmed the wild sea that was raging around and within the disciples. Quiet. Be still. That's what Jesus said. Mark chapter 4, verse 39. He's still the same Lord, and he's still got the same power to calm the wind, the waves, and the panic within us. He still has the power to take a story that begins with fear and end it with faith. As crisis tests your faith, remember that Christ is strengthening you. He wants you to learn to look to him, to trust him even in the middle of the fiercest of life storms. And like a muscle, as we work it, it gets ever stronger. This is how men and women of faith are made. They live in the knowledge that God protects them. So I'm living in this moment right now, 7.5 minutes into this video, of the knowledge that God protects me, because I am like a freak about bugs. And we have these things called maple bugs here in the church. And they're everywhere. And if you squish them, they bleed pink. And they stain everything. And they're everywhere. And I just realized my vestments are sitting here on the counter. And there's a bug crawling across my computer. And I'm just going to be calm. And I can't promise you I'm going to try to scoop it up and take it outside, because I have a feeling my shoe and that bug are going to make a quick acquaintance as soon as I'm done this video, especially after I move it away from my sweater. There we go. Ooh. Okay. So, wind and bugs. I'm having a freaky morning here thinking about these things, but realizing that we are not given anything more than we can handle. And that seems so pithy. It seems so ridiculous to say that to someone, God won't give you anything more than you can handle. You know what? God gives us more than we can handle all the time. Life does. It doesn't even have to be God. The fact is, though, that we have around us other resources that help us to be able to handle them. And we need to remember that. Those disciples were not expected to handle the storm by themselves. They already had the skills they needed. They knew how to handle that boat. They were aware, and sometimes fear is a good thing. They were aware of how powerful those waves were. And so they wouldn't be nonchalant. They wouldn't be like, "Oh yeah, Jesus here, no problem, we're going to be fine." They would be doing everything in their power to make sure their boat didn't overturn. They would be doing everything in their power to make sure that they and everybody on the boat would be okay. But they also had with them another resource, Jesus, who in his own ability was able to stop the storm. We may not be able to stop the storm, but we can handle the waves as they come at us. We can do everything that God has helped us learn to this point in life, 51 years old. This is how much God has taught me through life. And I can use all of those lessons to help me to deal with whatever I'm dealing with today. But then I also have to remember, and this is the biggest piece, that I am not expected to deal with these things by myself. God will help me. Now, God may not give me Jesus sitting right beside me to say, "Here, let me take over." But God might remind me that there are other people in my life. There are professionals. There are whatever the issue might be. I am not alone. There are those around me who will be able to help me if I ask and if I'm willing to let them. The wind may be ripping around me, but God built a lean-to provide protection. Didn't take it away, didn't take away my fear, but brought an element of comfort. Not so much that I would be complacent, but enough that I would trust. There will be calm in the storm, but we have to be willing to look for it. We even have to be willing to work for it. And we have to be willing to accept it. But we also have to be willing to accept that the storm itself may not end, but we may be given the gifts we need to go weather through the storm. What do you think? Have a great day. God bless you. And whatever storm you're going through, know that I'm praying for you. And I'm praying that you will know what resources you need, what resources you have at hand for you to help you to deal with that. And now I'm going to go and track down that bug, which is heading for my lunch. Have a great day and God bless. I'll see you tomorrow for Church at Home with Rachel.